we just love it. There's just something about hospitality, that it's in our blood. Like, we grew up being taught from such a young age about how to be hospitable. And so it doesn't matter how you felt, if your mum just yelled at you, if you just got into trouble, if you just had a fight, etc. As soon as someone walked into that door, the front door of our house, you had to be friendly, you had to be hospitable. And that's what we were taught to do. And so for us, it's kind of like, this is what we know more than anything else.
At the moment on Dirty Linen, we are talking about the future. How are things tracking for hospitality businesses around the country as they survey a landscape without JobKeeper, without rent abatements, and without some of the other government supports that some businesses have needed to rely on in this super tricky past year? We are heading to Sydney today, and I am absolutely thrilled to be chatting to Sharon Salloum, who owns Almond Bar with her sister Carol in Sydney, in inner Sydney, Darlinghurst, and also has Three Tomatoes Cafe a little bit further west in Ashbury. But Sharon, you grew up even further west than that, didn't you?
I sure did, in a little town called Granville.
Tell us about Granville. Tell us what it was like growing up there, and tell us about your family.
Well, look, with Granville, it's very famously known for, unfortunately, the train disaster. And then, the next thing it's kind of been known for is charcoal chicken. So in Granville, you're approaching Granville when you can see a heavy set of smoke above your car, and you open your window for a bit of fresh air, but all you get is charcoal chicken. So you've kind of hit that area. Granville it's such a mixing pot, a melting pot of people. It's such a mishmash of people. A lot of people from around the Middle East, with Middle Eastern backgrounds, and but we have such a mix. I grew up with a lot of Filipino guys, and different kinds of Asians and stuff like that, and Europeans. There was such a mix of people growing up, and it was such a great place to kind of grow up. And as for my family, they're all kind of located around Granville and the surrounding suburbs. Everyone's within about 10 to 15 minutes away, so everyone's really, really close, which means that, when my sister and I kind of moved out of the area, my parents kind of struggled to come to us because we're a little bit further away than 15 minutes, so it's too much of a trip for them, so we're often going back there to see them. We have family dinner every week, which we make sure we all kind of come to, and it's quite nice to do that. But yeah, lots of family around. My parents are actually one of 9 children on each side, so I have a span of 16 aunties and uncles, most of whom are actually still in Syria, but we do have quite a few that have kind of come over the years to Australia. One in Melbourne. Actually, we have a lot of family and friends in Melbourne, and then we've got them kind of spread out. I've got a brother in Brisbane, etc. So we're all over the place, really, with 16 aunties and uncles. That's to be expected as well.
Yeah, that is a big family. And I just love this image of you growing up in this charcoal chicken fog. And, Syrian culture, Middle Eastern culture generally, it is so much around eating together and about sharing food and especially, I guess, food that's cooked over fire. Can you tell us a bit about some of those backyard barbecues that were part of your life growing up and indeed still are?
Yeah, look, the family barbecue is such a big thing for us, like a lot of people will say, oh, what are you doing for Christmas or what are you doing for Easter? Ours is always a big barbecue. So we, Christmas Eve, it's normally at my parents' house, and, all the family comes over, the extended family comes over, and we have, a really big barbecue together. And I'm talking, like masses amount of food. Like the average person couldn't comprehend the amount of food you would have to, feed us. We're all big eaters, as you can imagine, so it's quite a big raucous affair. And so everyone's kind of involved in some way. My aunties come and help mum a couple of days beforehand. So it kind of starts a week ahead with things like, smoking eggplant for baba ganoush and getting chickpeas ready for hummus and, marinating meats 2 days in advance. And, so it's quite big. And then you have, aunties that'll bring desserts, and then, and then we have the males will often cook the barbecue. But over the years, I've kind of tried to take over the reins in that way, mostly to kind of honor the food, and the preparations that are involved. Because you just find that males, spend so much time, the males in my family spend so much time kind of socializing with one another, overcooking the barbecue. It's kind of like the food's forgotten, and they'll nibble as they go along. And it's, whereas I was just like, no, this is a bit overcooked or such and such. So, I was the annoying one that eventually just went, hey, move aside, I'll do it. Continue to socialize. You guys can continue to socialize and pick at whatever you want, but I just want to make sure that it's perfect for
Was
everyone.
that a tricky thing, as a young woman coming into this arena that was quite male dominated? Was that tricky for you to elbow your way in? Were there words spoken?
Absolutely, yeah. It's really hard. Like, so it's sometimes still a fight, still an argument, and it was something big that I kind of had to kind of wriggle into, and so is like even us opening a business as two females in our family, in our cultural background, was unheard of. I spoke to someone from ABC a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about family and food and stuff and opening the businesses, and I said that it was just such it was a challenge, because you had to prove yourself, not just as someone opening a business in the hospitality industry, but as a female opening a business in the hospitality industry, not just in our industry, but in our cultural background as well, as a female in our industry. And, how we grew up and being from a Middle Eastern background, it's quite hard to, prove people wrong, that you can be successful, that you can achieve things, that people kind of assume that you may not be able to. So, yeah.
And your partner is a woman and she's having a baby, or you're having a baby. I mean, that's also not quite traditional in a Syrian family, I would assume. So how is that all that sort of going down?
No, look, it's absolutely not. It's I'm also always big on saying, you kind of get into this habit of saying, we're having a baby. No, I'm like, I'm not having the baby. She's the one doing all the work, like, just so like, no, I really feel empathize with pregnant women. It's a big process. It's a learning curve, definitely, as you go along, but your family amazes you sometimes. And I have to say that I'm definitely one of the lucky, blessed ones in this case. Definitely not traditional. It's definitely not something, that I would kind of, just share with everyone. And, and I've always just been, kind of protective of my family in that way of, kind of respecting their needs and what works for them as well. So, and they've just been pretty amazing, to be honest. Yeah.
That's really, really great. So I think, Sharon, one of the reasons that I wanted to chat to you for this series about the future is that I know one of the things that's been such a feature of Almond Bar has been these big laneway parties where, if you look at it through a COVID lens, it's, a lot of gathering, a lot of, sharing food, a lot of rubbing elbows. And I just think I'd love you to talk about, those events and, how you see that spirit of sharing Syrian cuisine in a COVID landscape.
Look, it was for us. It was such a, it was such a clear kind of idea of going, hey, we love our barbecues. We want to do this in Darlinghurst, and we spoke to the council and we kind of like tried to get around all the, ifs and buts and, all the things that you have to kind of do with council. And what we kind of worked out was that we, for us, it was more just about, kind of creating this gathering of people, like bringing people together who would not normally come together, in a city, Sydney, everyone just, I guess in Sydney and in our lives in general, I think we've all just kind of got into this habit of, head down, bum up, just kind of really not taking notice of a lot of things that we forget to enjoy. And one of those for us was, kind of having a presence of people that would not normally be together to kind of come together. In regards to, COVID, obviously that completely killed that idea for us because there was no way we were going to have 300 people in this tiny laneway gathering, and obviously you don't want to be responsible for anything happening and all that kind of stuff, but it broke our hearts to kind of go, we've got to let go of this, So we normally do it twice a year. And we have yet to do it since 2019, which has been a shame. At the moment, we're kind of trying to work out a way that we can do it so that it's COVID safe. We've only just reintroduced one of the dinners that we do, that we'll have this Sunday, that we do once a year, because again, we were worried about COVID, but we've kind of reworked it in a way so that, we could kind of still have this dinner of this traditional dish, so that people can be present for that. But as for the barbecue, yeah, we're still in the process of trying to sort out a way that, we can kind of still have it, but make sure that it's safe for people to attend, and we're following all the regulations.
I mean, the event that you talk about on Sunday, like what sort of compromises or changes have you had to make to create a COVID safe event?
Well, so the dinner that we're having on Sunday at Almond Bar is called, it's based around the dish called mluchi. So mluchi it's a really labour intensive dish to make. My parents grow the leaves in their garden. And they only happen to grow 3 months of the year. So it's a dish that's eaten mostly in winter, but we missed it last winter completely. So normally when we serve it like we do at home, and it's almost like a buffet style. So you have this massive pot of basmati rice and this massive pot of like this green stewed leaf called jute leaves, or mluchi as we call them in Arabic. And then you have 3 different meats, and then kind of all the trimmings that come with that. So you can get up as a customer and serve yourself as many times as you want. We kind of explain what everything is, and we kind of had to avoid this sharing of utensils and all that kind of stuff, and, people helping themselves. So we basically worked out a way so that the staff could actually serve customers what they wanted instead. So, we've kind of reworked it so that we could still have it, because we found like there was so much demand for it last year, or people asking us, can you please do it? We'll book out the restaurant and et cetera, and all this kind of thing. So we were like, okay, mum's just cut the crop. She's chopped it all up. Let's just do it, and we'll work it out. And this is what we've done. So we're having that on Sunday instead.
That's so great that you've been able to find a way to do it. I'd love to just learn more about this leaf. What's it look like? What does it taste like?
Well, if you ask the average Arab that's grown with it in their backyard, they'll tell you that it kind of looks like a marijuana tree. So we've all got funny stories about how, police thought they were this, and how this person's mum had to, explain that it wasn't, and et cetera. So we've all got these stories that have happened in the past. But basically it's a tall leaf that kind of grows, it probably grows up to about between about a metre high. And it's just this beautiful green leaf that grows off these, really thin stalks. Again, only grows 3 months of the year. So it's called jute mallow, so Jute. Mallow leaves as well as the other name for it. So, and what we do is we pick off all the leaves, we chop them up, and then you basically freeze batches for all year long use. Essentially, you can buy it dried, but there's nothing like the fresh, out of your garden. And a lot of the Arab grocers will have people who sell it to them from their own gardens, and then they'll sell it on to customers. But, we're lucky enough to have mum and dad grow it themselves, and yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And so are the people that, are desperate to come and enjoy it at Almond Bar, is that mostly Syrian people who just we just have to have it at this time of year, or is it, people that you've drawn into your community over the years?
It's a real mix, to be honest, because it is such a labour-intensive dish to make. Like, you've got to make, numerous things separate to one another. It takes time, not a lot of people have access to the fresh leaf as well. So, we do get a mix. We've had lots of different, people from Middle Eastern backgrounds come in and have it, which has been fantastic, because, you kind of get that reassurance, hey, we're doing it, they enjoy it as well. So it's been a mix of customers over the years as well.
How connected have you felt to Syria through your life? I mean, you mentioned you've got so much family back there, and, I guess like Granville, Syria has been a place that's in the news for, really sad and difficult reasons. There's been so much conflict there. You're connected to the food traditions, but do you feel like, is Syria, really, do you really feel connected to Syria as a place?
Look, I absolutely do. I think as a child, when you are going to school and your mum's sending you to school with like labneh and za'atar, wraps and olives and labneh for lunch, and, sambusek and all that. You're really embarrassed about where you came from, where your parents came from and all that kind of thing. But then as you grow up and you're an adult, you really become quite proud of where your parents came from, and you've got this culture and this heritage, and it's a big makeup of who you are. We grew up in a very traditional Syrian household. My parents were strict parents, and we did none of those like fairy bread filled birthdays or anything like that. We just weren't allowed. But it's really grown a respect. Like for me, it's kind of created a greater respect for our culture and where my parents were born and came from and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely feel a big connection to Syria as I've gotten older. In particular, since the Civil War. There's just been so many stories and things that, that people have kind of, misinformation that's come out and stuff. So you become quite defensive, like not defensive, but you feel like you need to defend the country where your parents were born and, explain things to people. And unfortunately, people only have the media to go by, but when your family's actually there and they tell you what's happening, it's a different world and it's a different understanding. Like I couldn't. Unfortunately, my grandmother passed away in Syria. My mum's mum, she was the only remaining grandparent I had. And that was during the Civil War. And my mum is the first of the 9 children in her family. And couldn't actually, we couldn't take her to the funeral or anything like that. We couldn't kind of do any of that because of the Civil War. It was just too dangerous. But the closest thing I could do was take my mum to Switzerland to see her sister, who she hadn't seen in 14 years, who had fled to Germany as a refugee with her family. So that was, the next best option. And that was, I think, one of the best things I was able to do. And it was so amazing to then have that connection with an auntie that I hadn't had ever. And, to be able to, like cook with her and talk with her and, all that kind of stuff that you just, you can't really just get.
Yeah. Wow. What a beautiful, an experience born of sadness, but what a beautiful thing to have. All those flavour memories as well, I'm sure. So Sharon, let's talk about the restaurants, more from a business point of view and, this post-COVID landscape. Can you talk about, the differences that you've seen between your more inner city restaurant and your outer suburban or more suburban cafe? Are you noticing big differences in those different postcodes?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a big difference between the two. So we, unfortunately, in the city, anyone that was kind of in the city or around the city and stuff was probably affected a lot more than people in kind of like local suburban areas. And I think that was probably across the board with most states because you didn't have the same people going into work in the city and stuff like that. So you lost a lot of those numbers. Darlinghurst for some time now has changed because of, unfortunately the lockout laws and all that kind of stuff that's kind of taken place over the years as well. And that we lost a lot of kind of surrounding businesses and stuff during that period. But we decided to close a couple of times. We closed the first time for about 2 months. Because we just couldn't sustain the business on takeaway. It just was not, it's a destination restaurant. It's not the kind of restaurant you get takeaway from necessarily. I mean, there's nothing wrong with our takeaway, of course, but what I'm saying, and we tailored it so that it was takeaway friendly foods. So, we even tried to do that and like kind of take home packs and whatever. But yeah, we just couldn't sustain it the way it was. We had an amazing landlord. He's still amazing, to be honest. And then, our cafe kind of went towards the other spectrum. So where we've been like really blessed, had all our locals really just like really supported us and, threw all their support behind us. And, it was just amazing. So it was a complete turnaround. That going to takeaway only, was just unbelievable. Like, unfortunately when this all started, I was actually stuck overseas. And my sister changed both business models on her own in that time. And I kind of came out, had to quarantine at home for 2 weeks. And this was literally at the middle of March. And,
wow. Yeah. Where were you?
I was in Cuba.
Oh my God. Wow.
I know. But unfortunately Cuba had their first 2 cases when we were there. there was a lot of panic, and we were like, let's just go home. And then my poor sister, in between changing two businesses, basically had to change our flights because I couldn't get hold of insurance or anyone. So she did that, and then we came back. So I came back, and it was a whole new world. So yeah, but it's been a pretty amazing ride in a lot of ways, good and bad. But you know, we count our blessings every day and still do that we've managed to survive it, you know, this long, given when we've seen so many places kind of not do that.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been, I guess, exactly a year ago that you were just in the thick of those logistics and this incredibly confusing and fast changing landscape. It's just been a massive year.
Yeah.
What do you think? Like, how are you feeling about the future for both businesses? What do you think are the challenges, and are there things that you would like to see from government at any level to help you move forward?
Yeah, look, I mean, everyone knows when you run a small business, the overheads are insane. You know, you can't even begin to explain it to someone who, you know, wants to open a small food business in particular. I don't know. I can't speak for other small businesses, but for my feeling and my understanding of running a small food business is, you know, it's just nuts. Like the costs that are involved in doing that, you know, so it's really, you know, ideally, yes, tax breaks help, you know, like just kind of reducing certain things that we have to pay for, you know, like outdoor seating has helped, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's all the little things that make up running a small business is what really gets you. So I don't know if we can necessarily say, hey, can you reduce our pay as you go tax? Hey, can you reduce this GST, or can you reduce, you know, that would be nice. But at the end of the day, it's an accumulation of everything, to be quite honest. You know, it's all the little things, your bin fees, your you know, cleaning fees, and your cleaning your exhaust. And it's all the little things that come up along the way, unfortunately, that people kind of forget that you're responsible for in running a business. So, you know, if it was anything from government, it would be, honestly, anything would help. and that would be because that's what we've found over the last year, that anything that we've been given has helped in some way. You know, it could be the smallest of things, you know, like just having two tables outside of Almond Bar, you know, that's helped. Or not being given grief for having those two tables outside of Almond Bar, that's helped. You know, our landlord being understanding with the rent, you know, that's helped. You know, it's all those small things, you know, having some tax breaks. JobKeeper immensely has helped, and I think everyone knows that. You know, economically, I doubt very highly that the government will probably ever kind of have that as an ongoing thing. You know, but of course that has helped massively for us to keep staff employed. We have been one of the lucky ones where we haven't had to let go of staff. You know, but what we did have to do was kind of spread those hours out amongst our staff so that we didn't kind of let go of anyone. Everyone, just kind of, us included, had their hours reduced in some way so that we could kind of keep going and have everyone employed as much as we could.
JobKeeper's finishing for everybody at the end of March. Is that still something that you're relying on to help pay your staff? Oh,
absolutely. At Almond Bar, yes. You know, it has helped us pay ourselves, pay our staff. You know, those staff who are entitled to it. You know, the most heartbreaking thing was so everyone knows, you know, in hospitality, we have so many staff who are not residents, or who are not citizens, who are not entitled to any kind of benefits. And that's been absolutely frustrating, you know, for us. And that's why we refused to get rid of anyone, because we wanted to be able to create that support as much as we could.
Yeah, it's brilliant that you're able to do that, or that you made the commitment to do that. So when JobKeeper finishes, is that going to mean changes for your business? Is it something that you're looking at with some concern?
Look, we yes and no. We kind of just, I guess, for us, we're just going to see how it goes. You know, I guess until it happens, you kind of, you know, to be honest, Dani, we've hit a few bumps along the road over the years. This is our 14th year. So in August, we hit 14 years, and we've seen a lot of changes. You know, we've gone through the global financial crisis. We've had the lockout laws. this is COVID, like there's been a few things that we've kind of had to kind of go through along the way, and I don't know how sometimes, but we've managed to keep going. My sister's an ex-maths teacher, so I think that helps a lot to have someone who's so good with numbers and kind of like working things out and stuff. So, for us, it's more about, hey, do we have to rework things? Do we have to, open more nights and etc. So these are things that we have spoken about and that we need to kind of, definitely engage in if that's the case.
I mean, it is such an uncertain landscape, isn't it? Because I suppose, there's what JobKeeper or any other government's concessions might mean for your business, but then it's also, the changes that the end of JobKeeper might mean for the rest of the economy. And does it mean that, people who might be your potential customers might lose some work? And, what are those sort of flow-on effects? There's so much that you can't plan for or anticipate. And, when you talk about all those little things that all add up, like the bin fees and the extractor fans, and I suppose, for you to be able to rattle those all off, it does paint this picture of that, these businesses, these small family-run businesses, it's a week-to-week proposition in some ways, or they're always on a bit of a knife edge where every dollar counts.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this is, I think, what a lot of people don't realise, like we have so many people who say, oh, I'm thinking of opening this business, etc. And then you kind of have to you don't want to be that, dampener, but you have to put perspective into place for them and say, hey, are you willing to not be paid what you're getting paid now in your job where you're working for someone else? Or are you willing to make this sacrifice? Or are you willing for it to be such a big part of your life that basically, it's the first thing you think of when you wake up and the last thing you think of when you go to sleep? Like, these are all the little things that you that no one tells you, that when you open something and yeah, absolutely no one knows what will happen after March, and that's where we go, hey, let's plan to maybe do this. But at the end of the day, we kind of just have to tread carefully and see how it all goes, really, and just be, I guess, a bit more business smart. Like we have some ideas that we're kind of constantly, my sister and I will meet and chat about, different ideas about different things that we can kind of do and push and try and etc. So it's, as much as you go, hey, we'll save some money by doing this, or say something, unfortunately, you can't always do that in business. Yes, you don't want to be silly with what you're spending, but at the same time, you've also got to try and be a bit more innovative and try and, keep people engaged. And that's where all of that helps too.
I mean, what is it about it? I mean, it's difficult. You have to think about every little thing all the time. But what drives you? Like, what brings you joy about doing it? Why do you fight hard to keep these businesses going?
Because we love it. We love it. I know I could sit here and complain for the half an hour, about, there's all these things that people don't think about, but we just love it. There's just something about hospitality, that it's in our blood. Like, we grew up being taught from such a young age about how to be hospitable, no matter what is happening in your life and no matter how you feel at the time. As soon as my parents, and anyone that kind of grew up with an ethnic background knows that you have visitors coming over all the time, or you visit relatives and friends and family all the time. And so, a big part of our culture is to be hospitable. And so it doesn't matter how you felt, if your mum just yelled at you, if you just got into trouble, if you just had a fight, etc. As soon as someone walked into that door, the front door of our house, you had to be friendly, you had to be hospitable. And that's what we were taught to do. And so for us, it's kind of like, this is what we know more than anything else, So I love food. I love working with food. I love creating food, and dishes, and seeing people's reactions to that, and having, creating a food memory for someone saying, hey, that's the best such and such I've ever had, or that's, that is so good, or, it's such a nice feeling. And that's why, no matter what, I think, I'm going to be 100 and still want to hear people say that. It's just such a nice thing to hear people say that I gave someone that feeling, so it's, I don't know. I'm addicted to it. I can't do anything else.
I love it. Oh my God, I've got tears in my eyes. I think you just paint such a beautiful picture, and your passion is so evident. And yeah, it's anyone that comes through those doors is going to feel it. And yeah, you do change people's lives with the experiences that you give them. And yeah, it's meaningful, and it's real, and it's it's who we are as people. So yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. Sharon, can you just finish up by telling me, we spoke recently about a story I was doing about barbecue and the grill, and I just love this picture that you paint of these family barbecues. Can you just talk me through the menu of one of those, because I just love it from beginning to end?
Yeah, so it's it's quite full on. Okay, so there's always has to be. I'll start with kind of like the cold items we have to have that accompany the barbecue. So there always has to be hummus, baba ganoush, and tabbouleh, or fattoush, but mostly tabbouleh is the favourite. And the parsley's always coming from someone's house. So there's, my uncle or my mum or whatever will have lots of parsley. They bring it over, we chop it up, we make a massive bowl of tabbouleh, sometimes 2 massive bowls. Doom is a really big thing as well that we have to have with barbecues. And then with the hot stuff, we normally start with some sliced marinated potatoes. We've got both chicken skewers and chicken pieces as well that we cook, as well as lamb skewers, gufter skewers, and then I think that's mostly it for the meats. Then we do things like, grilled mushrooms. I try and throw in some pomegranate corn, so it's just some grilled corn with some pomegranate butter, which is a pomegranate molasses, butter, sumac, a bit of shallots and garlic in there. And then we'll just do plain grilled corn with lots of butter. The other things we do we always have kind of like a roasted onions as well on the skewers. So we like a bit of barbecued veg too. And then we always finish our barbecues once we've kind of eaten all of that and everyone's about to die. We then finish often with what we call dawn bread, which we've served in the restaurant as well, because we love it so much ourselves. So it's just the flat bread, so the Arabic bread or Middle Eastern bread that we split open, and you brush the inside part with dawn, so the garlic paste, and then we put it on the barbecue, and then we kind of break that and eat that up after we've finished the rest of the barbecue. Or sometimes we'll open that up, put butter on there, spread some melted butter on there, and then just sprinkle some sugar and cinnamon on top and have that instead. Then there's dessert as well afterwards, and coffee and tea. So it's an ongoing thing. You kind of it just doesn't end.
Just absolutely magnificent. I love it. And I love it that it's sort of like it relates to the fire, like you've got this fire that's, you build the fire, and then as the fire goes down, different things go on it with the, that last thing with the bread on the coals. I mean, it's just brilliant. It's just, yeah. It just tells such a story. Sharon, thank you so much for spending the time with us today, sharing your story, who you are, where you're at, and where the businesses are going. It's been an absolute privilege to talk to you.
Thanks, Dani. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Thanks to my dog as well for thanking you heartily as well.
Thanks, puppy.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This